I would like to address your question in two ways. So, firstly, when it comes to the global impact which is there from Indian perspective, I think key amongst it which Pfizer is looking at is to look at improving the number of clinical trials across the portfolio which is of Indian relevance to be placed in India. So, what we are trying to do is also look at how it can impact the Indian population and how we could commercialize these products in India, which is why the first step would be to place those clinical trials in India and also have capability building across board and across stakeholders in order for us to make that impact. So, that is what we are looking at. It has been a very positive framework over the last couple of years, especially after the government has introduced positive NDCT rules in 2019, and we can see that the implementation of those rules are making it easier to place trials and conduct them in the country. So, that is how we are planning over time to make a positive impact. Yeah. So, first and foremost, I would say that when we conduct clinical trials, it is important to use the centers which are absolutely having the ethics committee which is registered with the government of India. Secondly, we also look at those centers where the ethicality is such, where the ethics committee look into the patient's right, safety and well-being. So, without looking at these tenets, we do not go to any center, that is the first thing. So, choosing it right is one thing. Second thing is that it is important while we conduct the clinical trials, we continually keep a watch on whether these ethics committees are appropriately operating or not, and that is the other aspect of it. Thirdly, you asked about the adverse events and how do we clear the perception around adverse event. I think government on their part after 2014, when they initially released the compensation rules and the medical management within India, it was not very clear for many other companies or many other local players who may not be aware that they have to follow this. We at Pfizer make sure that we will be able to address this using the NDCT rules, looking at the compensation guidance which is there, which has a clear formula which also protects the rights of the patient while they participate in a clinical trial. And when it comes to the management of these trials, because we have selected the correct centers to conduct these trials, we invest a lot on the training, the capability building of these centers, also educating the ethics committee and partnering with various different societies so that their skill can be uplifted, so that there is no such controversy that we fall into. So, it is very important that we cover all the bases, right from the training, right from the selection of the right center, making sure the ethics committees are operating in the manner in which they should. And last but not the least, the contractual obligations are absolutely clear, and we do not look at the centers where there is no clear head of institution arrangement which is there. So, we make sure that the contracts are also absolutely in place, so that we do not fall into any such kind of controversy. Yeah, so Pfizer has a very rich oncology pipeline globally, and we have acquired companies which are into targeted therapies in the recent past. And what we are doing is we are running global clinical trials in India for those specialized products as well. And we are trying to make sure that we include the Indian population, have early insights into how these drugs act on the Indian population, so that we could commercialize at a pace which is really fast. As we do the global commercialization, we also do the Indian commercialization in quick succession. That is what we are doing. So, the first step to that is running the clinical trial and making sure the data from that clinical trial is accurate and complete, and that is what we are aiming for. So, we are focusing on 4 key areas, which is breast cancer, lung cancer, head and neck, which is absolutely relevant to India, and genitourinary cancer as well, and hemato-oncology. So, all the subtherapeutic areas of oncology are being covered as a spectrum, and we are running these trials in India at some of the top-notch centers, and also trying to make sure that the government centers also can be uplifted in the whole whole bargain, so that we can run these oncology trials across the population. Yeah, so it is too early because the acquisition has just taken place globally. So we will be able to talk about it only after we figure out how we will be able to look at the trials, etc. But I can certainly say the one which I talked of earlier, the one which was from Seagen, which we have acquired a large portfolio, which was last year, and that's why these candidate molecules are coming off that acquisition, and we are trying to launch these, I mean run these clinical trials here and then ultimately launch the products. But for 3S it is too early. Yeah, so I can't speak on behalf of Pfizer Inc., but I can certainly say that yes, those molecules which are there, we are making sure that it is equidistributed, and we still continue with doing trials in the US obviously, and we also are looking at distributing it across the globe and making sure all populations are represented well. So those cuts are not really having such a huge impact on the clinical trial framework which we had already set out. We aren't making any major changes in any of our plans for now, and we are running it business as usual for now. So as such, large companies are not really, I'm talking about global multinational companies, big pharma. They aren't really changing their investment plans within the US. Some of it, some of that amount of money which they are parking for R&D may move to other countries, certainly. So that's why we talked about in our panel China as the biggest threat and the competitor. So unless and until India really shows that scale of ability to do the innovation within the country, and also the reliance on the regulatory pathways, if that can be eased out a little bit, I'm sure big pharma will want to look at India. Right now they are looking at China. That's the bang on situation that we are faced with. But I would say that they would look at India provided we upskill the investigators who are conducting these trials, and especially the phase 1. We do have shoots of it while we are working with BIRAC, with ICMR, and they are opening their phase 1 centers so that we can do indigenous research. It is not enough. There is a lot more to do in this space as we look at our neighbors, because China is having already many things set, which is why they have their innovation set, whereas we are just budding, I would say. So we have a long way to go to catch up. So we have to catch up in that short period of time if we want to leverage what you are saying as R&D investments in India by big pharma. So while the local pharma, it's a huge opportunity at this moment in time, because they have all that is required to try to do some of the work in India, because obviously earlier on they were looking at Australia to do the phase 1s, they were looking at Romania to do the phase 1s. So now with the government trying to make a little bit of change with the phase 1s to be done within India, they have the opportunity to start doing, because these are indigenous make in India molecules which they can start to do, and the R&D investments can be moved here. So I would say the guidelines are there, they are easing out. So that is why a lot of biosimilar making companies, though big pharma may not be looking at biosimilars as how they used to look at it couple of years ago. Right now, biosimilar guidelines which have been released, we feel that it is much better than, I mean, it is easing out the ability to get quicker and faster approvals. But yeah, certain things like the approval process itself, explaining the science to the regulator, that is still work in progress, because even in the space of biosimilars is not exactly easy as compared to what we do as biotherapeutics as such. So over there, explaining each of those each of those molecules to the regulator as to why they are required first of all, and how they will be similar batch to batch, is something which is still an ask, and hopefully while people comment on those regulations, we will be able to see better improvements in the ones which have come out for comments. So we are also equally waiting what will be the feedback once everybody comments, and what will they come out with as the final regulation. So the PD, PK, those are the finer nuances where we are seeing you're right, because for every biosimilar we may not be able to demonstrate absolute PK, PD like how it is for a small molecule, and that's why the stringency, because a lot of the regulatory pathways which have been described, they they have to change depending on what kind of molecule we are dealing with. Like just to give different examples than biosimilar, we do have things like breakthrough designations in oncology space, right? So over there we move quickly from phase 1 to phase 3. We don't necessarily have to do a phase 2 because it may be a adaptive design on an umbrella trial. Whereas similarly in biosimilars, you will not have for every single analyte a toxicology data, a PK, a PD, because those are different therapeutics per se. So this is something which we spend a lot of time explaining to the regulator, be it in the oncology space, be it in the biosimilar space, and this can only improve if there is a scientific body which is looking into clinical development within the regulatory framework, which will require manpower, which will require skill development at the regulator's end as well. So only if both these match, then we will have a swifter, better approval, and these smaller pointers which you are talking about, the PK, the PD, etc., that can certainly change in terms of the understanding, because once somebody is there at the other end who understands that these things are not technically possible, that can really help, so that those type of guidances don't come out even in the draft, which disturbs the companies, because not all companies will be able to fulfill these requirements in order to get an approval for biosimilars or even for large molecules. I would say that India has made huge strides compared to what it was earlier. Maintaining the supply chain piece within India, the barcoding, the QR coding, the labeling itself, the guidelines for labeling which have come out, that is really getting better and better with year on year passing. Typically, let's talk about it from a clinical trial perspective first. So from a clinical trial perspective, every drug that reaches the hospital to the patient up to that point, there is a temp tail which is maintained inside the carton or inside the package that is sent to a hospital site. And hence in clinical trials it is absolutely well controlled, because we get to know remotely what is the temperature it has reached till the time it is reaching a hospital. And from there on, patient is given clear instructions, and if it requires cold storage or if it is a vaccine, etc., they are given those boxes so that they can carry it to their homes. But in real practice, so there is a difference between clinical research and clinical practice. So in practice, till the time it reaches a pharmacy, we know what is the situation. But beyond that, how is the pharmacist storing it in a pharmacy across the country? That is something we have no control. So over there, that's why I am saying that supply chain logistics, taking the feedback from them and trying to understand what is it that they can do better, because in clinical trials it's controlled. In the clinical practice space, we will have to have more interventions there so that patient safety can be definitely protected from a larger public perspective. So over there, we can't have temptail for each and every drug which requires a low temperature or which needs to be stored at a minus temperature. But over there we will have to check what exactly is done, because in Europe, even there, it is a pharmacist who is giving it. There is a QP control in Europe, like there is a qualified pharmacist and a QC which is done before the drug is dispensed. In India, you can go to a shop with a prescription and yet get the drug. So that difference is something which cannot be managed due to the large size of the population also, and to give temptail to everybody is also not a practical solution, which is why we will have to look at innovative means with the supply chain in the picture, so that they can advise what exactly can we do in India, because they are already managing this across the world. Yeah. And of course not in the developing countries. What I am talking about is in the developed countries. Yeah.
So last question now, looking at future, Pfizer being investing a huge amount in R&D. So how do you see the role of AI? We have seen majorly what AI is currently putting in reality is the preclinical part, identifying the molecules. We have one startup in India, that Peptris, for DMD rare disease molecule identified. So how do you see that AI role in clinical trials, and how is Pfizer looking to leverage it?
Yeah, so we are doing a lot in AI at this moment in time. Firstly, we are looking at site selection globally. which are the sites which have the highest potential for a given disease, so that we can look at hospital sites with the highest potential using AI from a macro level. We are also using AI when it comes to designing protocols, when it comes to the common minimal protocol template. We are trying to use AI so that we know our competitors, the external environment, so that we can design proper protocols which will be helpful to the patient. We are also using AI when it comes to the cycle time shortening and looking at the overall clinical trial dossiers which are being submitted to multiple regulatory agencies, and what are the kind of questions that are being derived by the regulatory agencies in order for us to swiftly answer the questions. And that's where AI is also being used, so that we can collate those responses really quickly. We are using AI when it comes to the conduct of the clinical trials to make sure that whatever input we are getting from a patient, let's say there is a patient device which is being given to collect the patient outcomes, patient responses from a clinical trial, how AI can collate that. And some of the places where we don't require human intervention, like for example, there are multiple sequential patterns which are there at a hospital site, and multiple people have to do the data entry. There are bots which are being designed so that that can be managed by AI. When it comes to the reading of the data, when it comes to collating the data into a CSR, a clinical study report, AI tool can do that in a much swifter and a better way. Also from the oversight perspective, which are the hospital sites that need maximum oversight because of lack of quality, or there is a dip in quality, again AI helps us to do that, and that's where we are going towards. We're also looking at the longer haul, which means that end-to-end designing of a program. How can one do that with AI as compared to, because we have multiple disease conditions, and which is the best protocol for a particular disease condition. That's also something which is being looked into basically from a program designing perspective. And finally, when it comes to submission to the regulatory agencies, which is the place where there will be a best market fit, and then coming to the pricing and those parts, that's also something where AI is being used. So as was being mentioned in our panel, we need people who know how to use AI rather than thinking that AI is going to kill everybody's job. That is not something what. So Pfizer is looking at all these spaces at this. I think at least 20 to 30% reduction is definitely expected in the initial years, and as AI learns more, as you know that it is highly dependent on machine learning as well, because AI is not just AI, it's also AI plus ML, so the machine learning. So as we go over time, it can even reduce it further from 30 to 40 over the years. So as the AI bot learns more about how these can be, how it is impacting, it will learn and it will reduce it further is what is the expectation.